Hello and welcome back to my channel. After a very long time, I do apologize. I have not posted a proper video on the channel for a long time, but I am back today with a quick little wrap up of the whole year, and I'm going over my 5 favorite books of this year so far. This year has not been the best reading year for me as far as total amounts of books that I've finished. Currently, I've finished just 24 books this year, which I'm not saying is like bad or anything. I know a lot of people, especially on BookTube and the internet, think reading is a competition and you just need to always be reading more. I just, had a lot of struggles this year, like internally, emotionally, mental health, all of that stuff. So I just wasn't reaching for books as much as I was kind of other hobbies, such as kind of puzzling. I got really into doing jigsaw puzzles last year and really did that a lot this year. I've listened to a lot more just like podcasts, and I've gotten a lot more into watching just general YouTube videos. But as of this video, like I said, I've finished 24 books. I do still have 2 in progress. So I am currently in the middle of The Obelisk Gate by N.K. Jemisin and My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. So I started both of these a couple of months ago, actually, and I just really have not been able to get in them or through them. I do hope to finish at least one of them, probably The Obelisk Gate, by the end of this year, because I do have the audiobook of this checked out from my library as well, and I'm definitely going to use that as assistance to help me kind of get through this a little bit quicker. I think it's a shame because I am really excited for this series, and I did really like the first book, which I read earlier this year, so I want to get into it. And My Heart is a Chainsaw, everyone really, really likes Stephen Graham Jones, and I just have not been able to get into it. This one I actually have a bookmark in page, I think I'm like 100 pages in. Not even, I'm on page 64. So before we get into what my favorite books of the year are, I do want to go over just light stats and things that I have kind of read or gone over in my reading so far this year. So like I said, I've read 24 books so far out of the year. Now, most of those I did enjoy. There was only one book, sorry, I have my reading spreadsheet right over here. There's only one book that I gave 1 star, which I didn't even grab it, but it's behind me on the shelf. It's Reincarnation Blues by Michael Poore. I read that as part of like a book club that I do with 2 of my friends, so I just really didn't like that. And yeah, so let's get into a little bit more of some happier stats. So of the 24 books that I finished so far, my average star rating for the year is going to be at a 3.64. In total so far, I have read about 8,425 pages, and my average book page count is 351.04. So very common. I tend to read books between the like 270 to 370 range of pages, so not super shocked there. What's something interesting, I did not actually read any repeat authors this year, as in the sense that every book that I read this year was from a different author. So I have read authors that I've read from in the past this year, but I didn't read any single author's multiple books within this year, if that makes sense. And then most of the books that I read were from the library. My kind of split on that was I read 10 books that I owned physically already this year, and I read 14 of those books or 14 library books, which most of them were audio. That's primarily how I consume a lot of my audiobooks. About 11 books that I read of the 24 this year were audio, and then 3 were ebook. So that is the other 3 that I got from the library. So some of the books that I did read this year from the library that I got as audio, I did end up buying this year as well. So I did end up accumulating kind of more of those books. I actually ended up hauling about 19 books this year. But most of those, like I said, are ones that I had already previously read. I did have 5 5-stars, and then 5 4-stars, and then one 4.5-star book. So most of the books I read, just under half I rated pretty highly. I will say, interestingly, the year that I read the most books that were published was actually this year of 2023. I read 8 books that were published this year, and all of those were from library as either an ebook or an audiobook. So that is that. Now let's get into my 5 favorite books. It is the 5 books that I did rate 5 stars. Now, I'm not saying these are the most well written, amazing fiction. Everyone needs to go out and pick them up right now. It's just the 5 books that when I read them, I really enjoyed them and had a really good time. And so that's how they typically end up as a 5-star rating for me. It's very much a feeling system, my rating system, more so than an actual technical how well is this book constructed system. So let's kind of get into it. All right, coming in number 5 is actually the only book that I don't own of the 5 so far, and that is The Only Survivors by Megan Miranda. This was Megan Miranda's release of this year, and this book this book follows a young girl or a young woman who is returning to this kind of house or who is returning to like a get together at this house on the seaside of, I think it was South Carolina. It was either North or South Carolina. But basically, she and the people that she's meeting with all survived this like tragic accident when they were in high school. And so they kind of get together every year to memorialize the event and each other. And then there are, of course, secrets and reveals and twists and turns. And overall, do I think, once again, this is like the most amazing book in the world? No, but I just had a really good, fast-paced, fun time reading the book. And I think Megan Miranda is really good at just writing really like popcorny thrillers that are just kind of entertaining for the sake of entertainment. There was some kind of critiques on like the grieving process and mental health available for victims of tragic events and that sort of stuff. So it wasn't just fully like devoid of any substance per se, but yeah, it just overall was really fun and I had a really good time with it. So then coming in at number 4 is going to be The Villa by Rachel Hawkins, which came out this year. I think, yeah, this book came out this year. I originally listened to this as an audiobook, and I really don't know what it was about this book, but it just really hooked me and grabbed me. About a woman, well, it's actually told in kind of 2 timelines. There is a woman in the present day timeline who's staying at this villa in Italy, and she has come with her kind of frenemy best friend. They're both writers, and they are kind of going on this like writing retreat to get inspired and kind of plot out their next books. I believe the friend writes like self-help, motivation, like influencer type style books, whereas our main character is more of a fiction writer. The kind of second half or the backdrop is that the villa they're staying at was actually the site of a like something happened back in the 70s, I think is when the second timeline takes place, following the story of like what happened at that event in the villa. The only things you know going in is that 2 of the people who were there were sisters, and one of them wrote this like very famous kind of horror-esque novel that was supposedly inspired by this villa, and the other sister went on to become a kind of like rock singer-songwriter performing artist and had like a really like fantastic album that was also supposedly inspired by this villa. It just was super fun. It's very atmospheric, really like grabbed me in, and I just couldn't stop listening to the audiobook. It was super fast, super quick paced, and I know other people don't necessarily like this one as much. From Rachel Hawkins, I've now read The Wife Upstairs, The Reckless Girls, or just Reckless Girls, and The Villa. And I really didn't enjoy The Reckless Girls. Why do I keep saying The Reckless Girls? I didn't enjoy that one from Rachel Hawkins, but both The Wife Upstairs I gave 4 stars, and then The Villa I gave 5 stars. So, you know, she's kind of a weird place for me. I think I'm kind of in the minority of that. I feel like most people enjoyed Reckless Girls over Wife Upstairs and The Villa, but overall, this was one of my favorites, and I was happy to have read it. Coming in at the number 3 spot, which I have to say I'm a little surprised that this book is number 3, but when I really think of it, my hearts of hearts, this is number 3, and that is The Only One Left by Riley Sager. So this was Riley Sager's new thriller release for this year, and I really enjoyed it. It is once again kind of following like a gothic manor-esque. This one is in America, and basically this story was inspired or takes inspiration from the Lizzie Borden story, who was this young girl in the 1800s who was accused of murdering her whole family with an axe. And so this story kind of goes from there. And I don't want to say too much because I think that going into this without knowing a lot of the plot is actually a lot better. I try to avoid the synopses for Riley Sager's books before I do read them. But yeah, this once again was just Very fun and pretty unpredictable. There were surprising twists and moments in here that I didn't see coming. And overall, Riley Sager is, I think, my favorite thriller author. And just, I tend to enjoy most of his works aside from The House Across the Lake, which again, I think I maybe am in the minority opinion on that one. But this one definitely didn't disappoint. I thought it was really good. And yeah, I'm excited to see his release for next year. Continue on, and we are going to discuss book number two, my second favorite book of the year, which this one really shocked me and took me for surprise. And that is All That's Left in the World by Eric J. Brown. So this book came out last year, I believe, and it follows the story of these two teenage boys. I think they're like 17 or 18. There has been a huge like apocalyptic event. There was like a big virus that wiped out most of the world. So very much, kind of your post-apocalyptic story, set in the same vein as like The Walking Dead almost, or something like The Fifth Wave, or those typical kind of stories. And the reason I loved it so much is basically it gave me such nostalgic vibes of reading like early 2010s YA, specifically things like The Fifth Wave or like The Hunger Games even. But it was actually really well done. Or I shouldn't say actually really well done. The story in here just flowed very well and it wasn't overwritten. I didn't think the dialogue was cringy. I didn't think the characters were cringy or anything like that. It felt very sincere and real and not over the top and not overwritten in a way that maybe sometimes YA books like this can tend to be, especially coming from that specific era of YA. And I also really enjoyed the depiction of a male-male romance in this type of story. This book would have never been able to exist back then. At least I don't believe that it would have been. So I'm just really happy to see that there is kind of this YA like science fiction type books that are out now that are having more kind of non like heteronormative representation in them. And the romance I also really believed in and thought was very nice. It is a very slow burn, so go into it knowing that. But I think the book is more about the journey than the destination. And I really enjoyed that aspect of it. So yeah, really kind of shocked that this ends up being my second favorite book of the year. And if it wasn't for like one obvious glaring thing that like probably was always going to be my favorite book, this would have been number one, The Woman in Me by Britney Spears. Now, I know that the book, since it's come out, has come under some more controversy, perhaps. I still hold this book up, and I was making a whole like review video going like basically line by line, page by page of this book. I never ended up finishing that video or doing that because I just didn't know what I was adding. I don't know, I just didn't feel good about the video itself, and so I never ended up finishing it to edit it or upload it. But I did really like this book. I thought it was very well written, and just some kind of the basic points from that video that I want to share here. I thought that the book was very well narratively crafted. I loved that it went in kind of chronological order. This was my first celebrity memoir, second ever just traditional memoir, so I was happy that it kind of went in that order. And I also think that the ghostwriters of this book, whoever they might are, because I don't think any are credited, did a good job in kind of crafting a very well-spoken narrative. And I do believe that this book is Britney's truth. I know there's been, once again, some kind of controversy coming out of people saying that things that happened in here were not true or didn't necessarily happen. And that's everyone's prerogative. But I think overall, I was very happy with this. And my biggest takeaway that I wanted to share is that if this is ever the last thing that we're going to get from Britney, which since it's come out, we know that it's not going to be, then I would be fine with it. But yeah, I just thought that this did a good job of summing up her story and kind of letting her voice be heard. So that is it. Those are my 5 favorite books of the year. So thank you so much for watching this video. Let me know if any of these books also ended up in your favorites list. Let me know what some of your favorites were. And yeah, I will be back in the new year with another video discussing some 2024 releases that I am excited for. I'm excited to do that video because typically I don't pay that close of attention to new releases, but there are some books that I've heard about coming out next year that I think are going to be pretty good, and I'm going to try to see if I can get to some of them. Thank you so much, and until next time, have a good one. Bye.